In this video, we're going to compare the first three amps in the Riga lineup. If you want to take a deeper dive into the features of these amps and why you might want one over the other, check out our full comparison in the link below. Now let's get started. Riga produces a complete line of integrated stereo amplifiers that cover a very wide range of prices. These amps are a lot like their turntables with their simple, no-frills design that focuses on great sound over gimmickry. With the recent introduction of their I/O model, Riga hit a price level way under $1,000, bringing that classic Riga sound to a much larger group of music lovers. We thought it would be fun to take a look at the new I/O and offer up some comparisons between the I/O, the Brio, and the ELEX R. For those of you new to Great Home Audio, we want to give you a quick lesson on just what an integrated amplifier is and clear up a little terminology confusion you may encounter if you start shopping around. An integrated amplifier is actually two components rolled into one, a preamp and a power amp. A preamp is the control section that switches your sources, might include a DAC or a phono preamp, and then sends the signal to a power amp through a volume control that lets you adjust the audio level. A power amp, as the name implies, simply provides power to your speakers. Power amps do not have switching, but just get a single connection from a preamp. If you combine a power amp and a preamp into one box, you get an integrated amp. That would seem simple enough, but in many European countries, and especially in the UK, the integrated amp evolved to just being called an amplifier. In the US, we would think of that name as meaning to be a power amp, so just keep that in mind when you're looking around at components. With these three Riga integrated amps being all about great audio, they do share some common characteristics. All three use a toroidal power transformer. These are quieter than standard power transformers and offer better performance, although they do cost more than a cheap basic transformer. Next, none of them have anything digital. They are pure analog. They also each have a good moving magnet phono preamp. All of the integrated amps have very solid binding posts for speaker connections for one pair of speakers. If you want to upgrade the AC power cable, this is possible on every model as they all have a detachable power cord. We sometimes forget about this when discussing Riga products, and it is a pretty amazing fact in this day and age of globalization, but all Riga products are made in their UK factory. Finally, each model comes with a small remote control for the basic functions of the unit. Now let's take a look at each one to help you understand which model might be the best pick for your system. The Riga I/O Integrated is just a great example of trickle-down technology. When Riga redid the Brio integrated amp in 2017, they learned a lot about circuit isolation, chassis design, and how to make a good headphone amp even better. The Brio has won a whole host of awards for its great sound for the money. You can really view the Riga I/O as simply a lower-powered Brio. Riga wanted to take all the great things about the new Brio and make a unit that sounded very similar with less power for customers who might not need the extra power in the Brio. The I/O is rated at a very conservative 30 watts per channel and has the exact same type of amplifier circuit the Brio does. Riga paid very careful attention to the part selection for the I/O to get the very best bang for the buck. The I/O has two line level inputs and a moving magnet phono input. The custom designed phono preamp is the exact same circuitry found in the Brio, which is pretty darn impressive. For the headphone amp, Riga uses relays to switch over to the internal power amplifier, which means it can drive any headphone with ease and sounds super effortless. When you plug in the headphones, the speakers are muted automatically. When Riga redesigned the case for the new Brio, they came up with a design using an aluminum shell with a heavier steel base to help improve the ability of the heat sinks to shut off heat. The case for the I/O is very similar in design, and in our opinion, it actually looks even better than the new Brio. With the only real difference between the Brio and the I/O being power and the number of inputs, the I/O is actually a great fit for a lot of people. The I/O uses just 2 output transistors per channel. There have been a few other classic amps over the last several decades with this type of layout. Something about that type of circuit just sounds really good on the right speakers. To our ears, on speakers that are not very demanding, The I/O actually sounds a little sweeter than the Brio, although the Brio certainly wins out on dynamics and separation of instruments. But at $400 less than the Brio, the I/O will let you take that money and put it towards purchasing a great set of speakers. Riga products are known for being true to the rhythm and pacing of the music, totally fun to listen to, and having the ability to portray dynamic contrast really well. The I/O captures all of these characteristics at a price point we have not seen before from Riga. If you pair up the I/O with a small pair of B&W Paradigm Klipsch or the new Riga Kite speakers, you'll have a system that can rival ones costing far more, especially if you're listening in a small to modest sized room. If you're thinking about the Brio over the I/O, you basically get an amp with a lot more horsepower. In addition to the extra power, the Brio gives you 2 more analog audio inputs and a tape output for those of you getting back into the retro world of cassette or reel-to-reel. The phono preamp sections are identical, so the big difference to us is in the power supply and power amplifier section. The Brio has a much more massive power supply. What this bigger amp power supply translates into from a listening perspective are much better dynamics and control. Bass impact, especially on larger speakers, is far better. The larger power supply in the amp stage also enabled the Brio to separate out individual instruments better in space. We didn't hear any real difference on headphones between the 2 units, as the amp and the I/O is plenty for any pair of headphones. So which is the better choice, the I/O or the Brio? If you plan to stick with an easy-to-drive, small pair of speakers in a modestly sized space, the I/O is a great deal. However, the Brio can drive far more demanding speakers with ease. For those of you who love listening to music and improving your system, it will take much longer to outgrow the Brio, if ever. Like the I/O, the Brio gives you that great live feeling to music that we just love about Riga products. You'll be able to mate it up with a variety of speakers, including most floor standing models, and its sound will make you smile. The Elex R is the next step up in Riga's line of integrated amps and the top model in this comparison. Feature-wise, the Elex R is similar to the Brio with a built-in moving magnet phono preamp, 4 other analog inputs, a record out, and it adds a preamp output. The preamp out will come in very handy for mating up a subwoofer to your system, a feature lacking on the Brio and I/O. We guess you can say the Elex R is really made for analog music lovers. At the Elex R price point, a lot of its competition will offer digital inputs and Bluetooth, but it is the great sound of the Elex R that makes people love it. It is no wonder the Elex R is one of, if not the most awarded amplifier in its price range. The Elex R takes the beefy power the Brio can produce and takes it to a whole other level. You'll find an even more massive power supply inside the Elex R, which makes it weigh in at more than double the weight of the Brio at 24 pounds. The Elex R comes in a full-size chassis, which also allows for increased heat dissipation. This guy will make your speakers stand up and pay attention with control over the dynamics and bass that is super impressive for its price. You'll be able to drive just about any pair of speakers we know of under around $3,000 a pair easily with the Elex R. The Elex R is rated at 72.5 watts per channel, but it sounds far more powerful than its rating. With that non-standard number of 72.5 watts per channel, you can tell Riga told the design team to make the best sounding amp they knew how to for its price point. Then whatever the power rating came out to is what it was. That's pretty cool. Vinyl lovers will be happy to know the phono preamp in the Elex R is a huge jump up from the Brio, as is the same one used in the much more expensive Elicit R. It is also super quiet with a total lack of any noise. It will easily support a P6 table with the top-of-the-line moving magnet exact cartridge. The only thing lacking compared to the Brio is a headphone jack. Riga elected to put the cost of this into the sound quality, giving you a better phono preamp and amp section. The good news is with the preamp outs on the rear, you can easily add a separate headphone amp with no issues. The Elex R takes all of the aspects we love about the Brio and just simply gives you more of them. Rhythm and pacing are even better, dynamics and bass control take another step up, and the separation of individual instruments, with each one revealing subtle micro-level volume changes, is easier to hear. Getting the best sound for your money comes down to remembering your system is only as good as its weakest link. When deciding on the best integrated amp, you have to think about the other parts of your musical chain, like your speakers and the source components. And, along with that process, consider where you want to be in 10 years' time with your system. If you have speakers and a front end that you love, get the best integrated amp that you can afford. However, if you have a fixed budget and are just starting out, the IO is just so amazing for its price point, you'll probably love it for years to come. If you have any questions on these amps or like help in designing the best system for your room and budget, please feel free to reach out to us via email, phone, chat, or if you're in the Raleigh or Charlotte area, drop by one of our stores. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss the latest home audio and home theater content. We'll see you next time.